Mute करते
You unmute Satya. Very good, Satya. Go ahead.
He muted himself.
Satya, you unmute yourself now. Satya, you have to
Yes,
unmute.
yeah, I got it.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Satish, for that kind introduction. As you said, yeah, I learned yoga back in Mysore, India, um, as a family who practiced yoga. My father and mother both practiced yoga as well as taught yoga, and so they were, teaching it as a social service. They did not charge any fees for it. And my father insisted all of us learn yoga, the postural yoga or asanas, as a means to keep healthy. And at the time, I didn't realize that the postural yoga is one of the limbs of Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga, and it is closely linked to spirituality and meditation. But later on, as Satish mentioned, after pharmacy school, I came to Canada and then moved to the US after graduate school, and that's when I reconnected to my roots in yoga. After doing stints of gym and tennis, I went back to yoga as a full-time practice, a dynamic form of yoga called Ashtanga yoga, and then that led to meditation as a kind of a natural progression. And so since then, as Satish mentioned, I've been practicing for a while, and I became an authorized trainer, and that slowly led to an interest in, since I'm a scientist, the relation between science and spirituality, and that's kind of my hobby and interest, and I like to share my thoughts on this topic today. So many of you might have heard this phrase from Sri Ravi Shankar: understanding matter is science, and understanding who I am is spirituality. So this kind of gives a kind of a compartmentalized view that science and spirituality are distinct and separate. However, modern understanding research in physics, especially quantum physics, has kind of given a more closer link between these two topics. And my hope today is to convince the audience that even though science and spirituality may seem far apart, science is understanding nature, material stuff we normally think as outside of ourselves, and spirituality is an inner science. But today's topic is to talk about how these are inherently linked. When you go, to the basics, down to at the fundamental level, we can show that these two are perhaps talking about the same thing. And the reason why science and spirituality became distinct and have kind of became confrontational, especially in the West, over the last several hundred years, is because when scientists started to discover that Earth was not the center of the universe and proposed, theories of human function and existence, they got into trouble with the church. So they kind of decided we will investigate the external world, and the church can kind of concentrate on the inner stuff, spirituality and religion. So they kind of became very kind of distinct. But that's not the same, what happened in the Indian subcontinent, in the East. The Indic knowledge systems are essentially based on this spiritual knowledge that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And this notion percolates every aspect of Indian culture, art, dance, music, everything. You can see this, that there is no clear boundary between matter and mind as it came to be in the West. However, we all grew up with our education system, which is mostly entirely based on the Western system and the language and the mindset. So we all kind of started to thinking, that science and spirituality based on our upbringing, our Western education, even in India, which made us think that these two must be different. They were not inherently somehow connected. And our thoughts and action has no bearing on what we experience, because this stuff called matter is outside of us. How can it have any influence? How can we have an influence from our thoughts? And and finally, this has led to the conviction that our experience, what we call as our consciousness, is the subjective experience. The inner experience is also somehow generated by the brain, which is made up of so-called dead inert material, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and so on. So this kind of contradiction in itself. And recently, you might have heard about the hard problem of consciousness. So basically, scientists, even though we have technologically advanced in terms of science and technology, scientists still cannot explain, simple experiences like, the taste of chocolate, the taste of mango. Scientifically, the experience, or even the experience of having this conversation, that is made possible by science, but what we experience, how experience happens at the fundamental level cannot be explained. They can correlate, brain activity, with certain experiences, but that is, as you know, that is not the same as causation. So what I'm proposing is materialism has played its role. It has helped us develop this fantastic objective science based on objective investigations. It has led to all these technological advances in science, in medicine, and computers, and even making it possible to have this conversation across space. But as we know, but this has obviously led to conflicts, because this separation, that we are separate from others, we are separate from this natural world, is the obvious cause of the conflict we are seeing in politics, in religion. This can all be linked to this inherent conflict. And however, as I mentioned, recent advances in science and technology is contradicting what our intuitive experience says, that we are separate from this world, and we are separate from each other and separate from this world. But that is being contradicted by latest findings in quantum physics and neuroscience and so on. So today's talk is a kind of a personal journey in understanding this paradigm shift that is taking place. So in order to do that, don't worry, I'm not going into any equations or quantum physics and so on. So we are mainly interested in understanding, what is it pointing to? What are the conclusions of quantum physics pointing to with respect to nature of reality, for example? So in order to go there, let's understand some definitions. What is objective reality according to classical physics? Is real things have objective experience, and these are kind of fundamental, right? Something exists even when you're not looking at it, and we all agree on its size, shape, color, and so on. So this is what we normally think as objective reality. However, recent advances in quantum physics indicates that all observations occur in consciousness, and therefore consciousness itself might be the only true objective reality. So how is that so? And I will get into it one by one. So you might have seen some headlines like this in various magazines, scientific as well as in the popular culture. So quantum physics has profoundly challenged our understanding of the nature of reality, revealing a world that is fundamentally different from our everyday experience and intuition. So what does quantum physics questions objective reality? Objective reality may not exist the way we understand it, and what the anomalies that we see in quantum physics making us to rethink reality. What does it mean? So to understand this, what we will do is we will actually this is the only kind of a video I will show. This is a cartoon video because I think it does a much better job than me trying to explain this central mystery of quantum mechanics, what is known as a double slit experiment. So I will play that and then continue the discussion on the other side.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
So we'll go back to our presentation. So that's the famous double slit experiment. And then double slit experiment was the original kind of a foundation experiment that surprised and confused a lot of the early pioneers of quantum physics. And so, for example, we all, let me, here. Yeah. So we all grew up in schools and colleges, understanding the structure of atoms. That atoms are building blocks of matter. They have a nucleus and then surrounded by orbiting electrons and so on. We thought, particles and atoms actually existed like that in the materials, in matter, for example. But however, according to quantum physics, as we just saw, and other findings, these are conclusively shown. What I'm showing on this slide is there's no ambiguity. These are proven aphorisms of quantum physics. A particle does not have any real existence until they are observed. And something comes into existence only when you see, but it does not exist, when you're not seeing it. So it only exists as a potential in a superposition. So until we detect it, then only it becomes a particle. And physical systems do not have definite properties until they are measured. So this is kind of, contrary to common intuition and logic, the way we all understood science in, high schools and colleges. So, so this calls into questions, what is fundamental reality? Is matter fundamental as we thought, or is it and there is the paradigm shift that I mentioned earlier. This is
You're married to do it. No, I'm a different type. You married me because I'm like straight.
Can you mute?
Murthy, you unmute yourself.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So this paradigm shift that I mentioned earlier is about this one. There is a paradigm shift in scientific thought, although what I'm showing on this slide is not universally accepted. There's still hot debates going on, in the scientific world. But more and more physicists, philosophers, neuroscientists are beginning to kind of shift towards this paradigm that consciousness is not an emergent property of matter. Consciousness is not generated by the brain as we normally have, studied and understood. And on the contrary, is the foundational principle of the universe. And observers bring the universe into existence. And a pioneer of quantum mechanics, Max Planck, stated back in the 30s, when this was not widely known, but he was regarded as one of the pioneers. He was convinced at that time that matter is, consciousness is fundamental, and matter is derived from consciousness, and we cannot get behind consciousness. So this is where the paradigm shift is taking place. To kind of understand this, how can consciousness be fundamental? Now I'm trying to bridge between the physics and the philosophy. Especially the dream analogy in Indian philosophy is a great way, to kind of understand this phenomena or the philosophy behind this. You may not get it right away, and you may question, how can this be true? But this is what, for example, the Mandukya Upanishads talks about the four states. The waking state, the deep sleep, the dream state, and then the Turiya, the fourth state, which is the meditative state. So in the dream analogy, how can we help? How can it help to kind of understand how consciousness is fundamental? So what is our relationship to the dream? The only true relationship is we are witnessing the dream. So we bring the dream into existence by witnessing or observing the dream. Just like the particles don't exist until somebody, a conscious observer, observes it. It is the act of detection or observing that brings into existence. In the dream world, we have multiplicity and diversity of objects, just like in it, we see it in the waking state. And each body mind having its own experiencing the external world is out there. Even in the dream state, we have the same feeling that there are people, there are objects, and then the external world is is outside of our body mind. Even in the dream state, we have the same experience. But when we wake up from the dream, we realize that our single individual mind was able to kind of create that, dream state, which included, all these people, places, and, whatever, dream was dreamt. So the analogy here is that the universal mind or the God's mind, is creating this universe. There is a single consciousness. We are all sharing the one consciousness, and we all experience, different body minds, because when the consciousness filtered through our sensory organs, we experience the external world through our perception. As I indicated earlier, whatever experience we have, is only through our consciousness. It has to be through our sensory organs, and consciousness enables our sensory organs to have the, experience of taste, smell, perception, and so on. So we cannot have any experience that is outside of our consciousness. So the dream analogy, from Indian philosophy is a kind of a great way to kind of begin to understand this. I know what I'm proposing may be controversial, but this philosophy has been derived from discussions in the Eastern tradition for thousands of years, and our pioneers, sages and rishis, they hotly debated this, and they thought of this during deep states of meditation, and it looks like this philosophy actually helped pioneers of quantum physics. They were actually inspired by and helped them understand what they were, seeing. Some of the anomalies, as they thought of quantum mechanics, didn't seem so crazy all of a sudden, once they started to kind of relate it to Indian philosophy. Another unique phenomenon in quantum mechanics you might have heard about is what is known as entangled particles, or quantum entanglement. It demonstrates that particles can be connected in ways that defy classical physics, exhibiting correlations across vast distances, and across time, notions of time and space. So this is kind of a mind-blowing stuff, entangled particles. And it is real, even though a great scientist like Einstein did not believe it, when it was first proposed in the 1930s. He called it as spooky action at a distance. So what is entangled pair? For example, if you take a photon and split it into two by passing it through a special prism, you can create entangled photons. And so if you split up, and you can separate these photons across vast distances, and you can, people have, done these experiments, by sending one proton, across the room, across, to another building, and the logic holds, and the equation holds that even if you send it to the ends of the earth or ends of the universe, it will still correlate. If one proton spin is determined as positive, 100% of the time the other photon's spin will be exactly opposite. So this correlation across vast distances has been proven, and so this kind of challenges our notion of locality. And so what physicists and this entangled particles was first proposed in the 1930s, and it was challenged, debated, and not until the 1980s and maybe even up to 2000s, when sophisticated instruments became available, and through experiment they, overcame all the loopholes that one can propose in these experiments. it has been confirmed over and over again that this phenomenon is real. So quantum entangled universe is non-local. And these findings led to Nobel Prize in 2022 to these physicists shown on this slide. So finally, to kind of come to the full circle on quantum physics and to put it all together, renowned physicist John Hagelin presents the thesis that consciousness is a unified field that contains nature's programming code. So the fundamental laws governing the universe and the structure of reality is it can be explained in terms of layers, from classical to quantum field theory, and at the foundation it is what is called as pure consciousness or unified field. This is below the Planck scale. So the fundamental unity at the core and the evolving diversity on the surface. And this has been described in mathematical terms, but in plain common language, the fundamental reality at the foundation can be described as pure abstraction or absolute silence. And this is not a field of inertia, but very dynamic and very creative, because this is the creative force of the universe. This is what generates all these various forces and that led to the creation of nature. That's how he explains it. And this is where we make the connection to spirituality and meditation. So on the right side, we have the various levels of the mind, right? Meditation. Here John Hagelin is a quantum physicist as well as a meditation practitioner, transcendental meditation practitioner. According to him, the conscious mind is usually directed outwards, because when we operate in this world, we have to focus on objects. But during meditation, what happens is our mind becomes quiet. As we go into, as it becomes quieter and quieter, and we bring it down to stillness, that it merges into the pure consciousness. So this is pure awareness, in the silence and pure awareness, no thoughts. So this is the merging of the individual mind to the universal mind. So on the left we have the pure consciousness, we are showing as the creative force of the universe, and on the right, we are showing we have access to this pure consciousness because that is our inherent nature. That is who we really are in the background. At the background, behind the thoughts, emotions, this is where thoughts arise from, pure consciousness. So we all have access to this pure consciousness, the same consciousness that is called the unified field on the left. But problem is, most of the time we are not aware of it. And meditation practice is a way to become aware of this, first of all. And then with practice, you can attain this meditative state for longer and longer periods. And then, in the next part, we'll see how it can benefit us in terms of our health and well-being. So this amazing force, the unified field, is the basis of this universe, is the basis of us. And in the next part of this presentation, I'm going to go into a more classical way of how science and meditation are linked. So until now, we kind of started with quantum mechanics, physics, and we bridged from consciousness to the consciousness that we experience and the stillness that we can experience in meditation, how they are one and the same. And now we'll go into how regarding brainwaves, how meditation has been studied in a more classical way over the last 10 to 15 years. For example, this is EEG waves. Many of you are in the medicine field, so I don't need to go into details. We can study these patterns of brain waves using a skull cap, which has electrodes covering the various regions of the brain, as shown on this slide. In the awake, alert consciousness, for example, we are listening to this conversation. We are normally, in the beta phase. Our brain waves will be in this pattern. As we relax physically before going into meditation, it will go into alpha, slow down, the activity slows down, and then we go into theta and deep sleep, or in deep meditation, we can even reach delta state. And in the next, here is a kind of a plot of that brain wave activity. The normal brain wave activity is shown here with the various electrodes on the same graph. So this is what normal brain activity looks like. However, in the meditative state, it has a unique pattern called the alpha wave coherence. So they are kind of synchronized. The various regions of the brain are kind of humming, in the same pattern. So they are coordinated. So that's why it's called the coherence. And what is the benefit of such coherence, attaining such a coherence state? What are the real world implications of brain integration? So what does it mean? We are in contact with our inner self, or the inner consciousness. We have heard, the other word we can use is we are in a zone. You might have heard world-class athletes saying, they are in a zone and they are performing at the highest level and they're not even thinking. So that's what happens, when we attain the meditative state, the same type of integration happens. And the idea here is, we can attain this meditative state during meditation, but we can also take the meditative state into what we do, what type of work, athletes or musicians, those who perform at the highest levels, they can attain this naturally. Obviously, some of them may practice meditation, but most of them perhaps they don't, but they're able to kind of get to that zone. Somehow they have the natural ability. So we have what meditation we are proposing is, through meditation, all of us can develop this ability to kind of get to that zone where we perform at the highest level and we don't have to think. Becomes effortless. Roger Federer's natural and effortless tennis comes to my mind. Meditation and the brain. We don't have to look very far to find the benefits of meditation. Are now becoming mainstream. Interesting discovery is that only after a few weeks of meditation, the gray matter thickness increases in the frontal lobes, and where in the prefrontal cortex, which manages important decision making and planning. It's also called the CEO of the brain, where we perform executive function. So meditation also has been shown to promising effects on the telomere length and dynamics. These are important biomarkers for cellular aging and health. Telomeres are little kind of protective caps, almost like the plastic caps at the end of shoelaces to keep them intact and functional. And so by protecting them, it plays an important role in making sure that our DNA gets copied properly when the cells divide, and then reduces errors in duplication of the DNA during cell division. So it's kind of a very important function. And meditation, by practicing meditation, we can keep this telomere length, as we age, longer and longer. Some of the scientists and philosophers that I follow are shown here. Bernardo Castro, he's both a scientist and a philosopher. Donald Hoffman, Federico Fagin, and John Hagelin. There are a number of other pioneers, in this field, but these are some of the names that I wanted to share with you. So now in the next final phase of my presentation, I'm going to kind of link what we just understood regarding consciousness into more common language, and link it to heartfulness meditation, the meditation that I practice. The fundamental practice, whether you practice heartfulness or another system of meditation, the ultimate goal is to achieve or arrive at that unified field or consciousness that we saw a few slides ago. So this applies to any form of it. It is not unique to heartfulness meditation. So what is consciousness? We can ask ourselves a question: am I aware? And the answer is obvious. So because without awareness, we cannot have any experience. Whatever we are experiencing, we are aware of it. I'm aware of giving this presentation. You are all, as an audience, are aware of listening to it. So as I mentioned earlier, we can't have any experience that is outside of our awareness or consciousness. To understand this, a movie screen analogy helps. So when you are in a movie, theater, it is a white screen. We know that it's a white screen on which the movie is being shown. However, when we are totally immersed in a thriller, we forget we are sitting in a movie screen and we are so absorbed, and we become part of the movie or part of the story. So in a same way, the story of life, goes on in the background of our awareness. So everything that we do, everything that we experience is being played out on this field of awareness. But most of the time, we are not aware of that. Just like we are not aware of the movie screen, we are not aware of our own awareness. Our thoughts, emotions, perceptions keep changing, but the one thing that does not change throughout our life is that sense of I am. I am, before we say I am this, I am that. Just the pure I am is the pure awareness that I'm referring to. And this is what, is unchanging, immutable, and eternal. And the problem we have, kind of understanding this is because awareness does not have any kind of qualities that can help us to focus on. If we have an object, we can say focus on this object. But awareness has no characteristics. So can you bring your attention to your awareness? It's a bit hard to do, but it's much easier we can rest in awareness. And this is exactly what happens in meditation with some practice. Doesn't matter whatever meditation system you are practicing. At the fundamental level, this is what we are aiming for, is to rest in pure consciousness. Yeah. We can only be in awareness or rest in awareness. We cannot bring our attention. Bringing our attention is like if you have a flashlight, you can show the light on any different objects, different objects in the room, but you cannot shine the light on the bulb itself, the flashlight bulb. So that's how this awareness is. It is so fundamental and so near to us that we are not aware of it. We take it for granted because without awareness we cannot operate. But most of the time we are not aware of our awareness. So in the Indian philosophy, you might have heard of the name Tattvamasi, I am that. So our true nature is this awareness. And in the Christian tradition, there's a saying, be still and know that I'm God. So that's what perhaps they're referring to. So why, meditation? An average person apparently has more than 6,000 thoughts per day. But most people live with the constant noise in their head because we are not aware of it. We are identified with those thoughts most of the time, and we think we are our thoughts. Meditation is a way to kind of separate ourselves from our thoughts. Our thoughts can come and go, but the awareness behind the thought is constant, as we saw in the last slide. So when we say we can get peace from meditation, harmony from meditation, is that's what I believe. My understanding is it comes from this, identifying more and more with that awareness, experiencing, more and more with practice in meditations, is that inherent peace that cannot be destroyed. So that is, that's how we begin to feel the awareness and the peace and the stability that comes from it. And as we saw, this creative force is there, the creative consciousness or the awareness, and it can help us, through intuition and inspiration. And you might have heard most of the major discoveries in science happened when people are sitting and not thinking or working, in a laboratory. They were just sitting and relaxing. Whether it's, Einstein, came up with the theory of relativity. Apparently, he used to sit and relax in a bathtub for hours every day. Newton, when he observed the apple fall, he was just resting under a tree. And the Eureka moment of Archimedes. So all this shows that the intuition and the inspiration that can guide us in our life is within us. This force is within us. So meditation is a way to kind of tap into this energy and keep that meditative state, as we saw, in that example of athletes and musicians. We can also kind of stay in that state while we are performing our daily activities, whether it's interacting with the family or interacting at work or at a grocery store. We can bring that. And then, sometimes we get caught up in the emotion and a particular, point of view on certain things, and become so identified with a mental position, and we try hard to kind of defend it. And that can be very scary, identified with thoughts. But after a while, when that thought passes, we probably feel, okay, it was not so bad. I thought the world had come to an end. So by just differentiating and disidentifying with our own thought processes can help us. And then cultivating balance through meditation. So just as a tree is sustained by its roots, our outer development needs to be supported by the strength of our inner development. Why do we need to meditate? The point is to live a balanced life. We take care of our bodies, by exercise, we eat good food, and we sleep to give body a rest, to rejuvenate. And meditation is a way to kind of develop that inner growth, inner potential, tap into that. And the final few slides, heartfulness meditation, why the heart? Heart-centered approach to life. Live naturally in tune with noble qualities. These are the qualities that are associated with the heart. Compassion, contentment, empathy, being empathetic, gratitude. We all want to cultivate this. And we read, self-help books to get better at, these things, practicing these things into our daily life. Meditation, heartfulness meditation is a way to kind of connect with this at a very core level, because heart, as we said, heart is the center of life, heart-centered approach to life. And the only way we can get to peace is the, heart is at peace, the mind is at rest. So everything starts how we feel, in our heart. And happiness is our innate nature. But most of the time we are looking for happiness outside, in places, things, or experiences. And this cartoon is saying, let go of the wanting and let go of the desire, and all that is left is happiness. Spirituality doesn't say, go out and have fun, but don't expect happiness to derive happiness from these experiences. We can share our happiness that we already have by doing certain things, enjoying with our friends, our families. But if we expect happiness to come from those things, that's when we have problems. So finally, heartfulness is a comprehensive approach to life. It all starts with developing self-awareness, understanding and feeling that our essential nature is awareness, not our thoughts or concepts about ourselves. And this core element of any spiritual practice drives all these other transformations possible: social, emotional, career. All these are made possible by this core element of expanding our self-awareness. Passion to compassion, thinking to feeling, selfish to selflessness, fear to courage, and even from a career point of view, all these are qualities: poise, acceptance, wisdom, aspiration. These are qualities you look for in a leader. So these, with a heartfulness practice, we can naturally progress in these kind of elements that help us. We're not focused on, just getting promotions at our company, but if you develop these qualities, all those good things will come naturally, and we become anxious or greedy. And then, so it's almost top of the hour. I'll finish up with the one 2-minute video on heartfulness to end this. And before that, I think this is a very important slide. I recently came across this book. I just wanted to share it with you. This is a book called Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller from Columbia University. She talks about achieving awareness and then awakened awareness. we all as Indian Americans, we are all great in achieving awareness. There's nothing wrong with it. This is very, often necessary to enable us to focus attention, complete the task, study for the exam, work hard. But when overused, achieving awareness alone overrides and changes structure of our brains, carving pathways of depression and anxiety and other things can come. So when we engage in awakened awareness, we make use of different parts of our brains, and we literally see more integration, from different parts of the brain in our perception. And just looking at these different tasks identified here, by practicing connecting with spirituality, by bringing these elements into practice, you can see our whole outlook of life can change dramatically. If our self is inherently worth, it's not tied to our abilities. Our identity is not just acquiring success, but meaning and purpose. Our place in the world, we are all connected, with a spiritual core, with a spiritual practice. We can kind of experience these things and then bring that into practice in how we live our life. So these are kind of very, at a fundamental level, amazing things to kind of inculcate into our practice, as well as to teach our kids that, yes, achieving awareness is great. We need it for success, but that alone does not help us to lead a good life, a worthy life. So we need the spiritual core. And this book, describes this. It's amazing, scientifically proven. Our brains are wired differently when you start to practice, when you have identified with the spiritual core and derive meaning, in what we do, and inherently, we are all worth, whether we achieved it or not. Each one of us will achieve at different levels of success. But if our self-worth is tied to this ability-based, we can see how much harm it can, do to families, and do to our kids. So I highly recommend this book for all of us to read. So I just want to end this presentation with a 2-minute video on heartfulness. Sorry.
Is a worldwide movement to make free meditation training available to everyone through volunteer trainers, both online and in person. While meditation is often thought of as difficult, time-consuming, and involving an unreal amount of concentration, the Heartfulness Way is simple and practical. Heartfulness meditation is centered on the heart and aided by the transmission of a subtle energy that helps us experience ever more refined states. The meditation is complemented by a process of getting rid of mental impressions and patterns that influence our habits, tendencies, and behavior in ways we do not even know. This approach has the potential for an unlimited expansion of consciousness. To use an analogy, if our consciousness is viewed as a window into existence, heartfulness meditation can help expand that window from a tiny peephole to an ever-expanding field of view. However, no matter how wide the view, it would be hampered if our window was stained or unclear. So the clearing of impressions helps keep the window clean. You are welcome to try the heartfulness practice and see if it works for you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Satyamurthy. Very nice. Very good.
So much information.
I think, thank you. We will, actually, some of us doing this, but I hope we continue. We are doing this. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, usually when I make a presentation, you will have a 20-minute actual practice of heartfulness. But since it was late hour, I didn't want to do it. But plus after an hour on a Sunday night, I didn't want to put you through that. We will probably fall asleep, all of us. But yeah, any time you want to do it another day, fine. Yeah, we can do it, and I can take you through the practice. It's a very kind of simple practice. There are no
Satyamurthy,
rituals, dogmas in heartfulness.
Radha Gurumutla, she is there, Radhika, and we recorded her. She did our yoga group we are doing now, meditation, heartfulness all the time.
Okay, wonderful.
Most of us practicing.
You are familiar with it.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, actually, my niece, my nephew, they're also trainer like you. They trained us.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Radhika, you're there, Amma? You want to say something? Can I unmute, Radhika?
You can unmute everyone if you want.
No, I cannot unmute a thing. I can.
I thought you can do it.
No, I think, let's see. Mute all. Ask all to unmute. Mute all of an entry. Play join. Most tool for the.
It's okay. They will do it. Whoever wants to talk, they will do it.
Yeah. I just have a question. I have a lot of difficulty understanding this concept of matter not being present until it is seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll okay, we have this pen, right? I have a pen, okay? And of course, there's nobody sitting here next to me. Like, imagine that there's another person sitting next to me.
Right.
Okay, if this pen only is there when I see, I can close my eyes and touch it and feel it. It is still there, right?
Yes.
So how do you explain that? How do you justify saying that an object is there or it magically appears when you see it?
Yeah. So what they are saying is, even when you close your eyes, you still have to use, it is the consciousness, the perception of touching. You experience your pen. You are not using your visual senses when you are touching something. For example, you can close your eyes, but to feel that the matter is there, right? So ultimately what we are seeing is all experience happens in consciousness. So that's one of the fundamental statements that applies to both quantum mechanics as well as spirituality. That is same. But in terms of detection or observation, that's usually at the quantum level. For particles, but they have extrapolated to solid objects, classical objects like for example, the pen you are showing. So you don't see it from a visual point of view. You are not seeing it, but you are able to feel it using another sensory organ. So that's how it is explained. I know this idea that objects exist only when we see them. It's very counterintuitive. It's very hard to understand because it's obviously we think whether it's we all heard this question, right? If a tree falls in the forest, did it make a sound? Right? We all growing up, I think we have heard this question. If nobody is there in the forest, if a tree falls, does it make a sound? We all used to think that yes, it would make a sound, but quantum physics says, if there is no observer, there is no sound. And even if you put a listening device, the listening device records, but some conscious observer has to play it to be able to say, okay, something happened. So this is very very hard to understand, to grasp that, because it's very counterintuitive, because we are conditioned, with this notion of external world is separate from us, the objects are out there. So what this paradigm is saying is very counterintuitive. It will take a long time for it to become kind of more universally accepted. But the experimental proof is there, and also I'm not a quantum physicist to go into the finer details of the philosophical understanding and how to kind of explain some of the questions that you are raising, valid questions. These questions are applicable. I've seen these questions asked even during the philosophical discussions. But yeah, please, I can share the presentation. I refer to several philosophers and scientists in my presentation, at least 4 of them. Please listen to their lectures, especially Bernardo Castro. He's on YouTube, a prolific writer and a speaker, and he can explain this, better than most people that I know. So he has put a lot of information on the website. He has published books. He's both a computer scientist as well as a philosopher. He has a double Ph.D. And he has come to this conclusion, what I propose, this paradigm, strictly from a scientific point of view. He's not a spiritual teacher or anything like that. He's strictly from a science background. He has arrived at this conclusion. What he calls it as analytical idealism, that everything is mental. So what he I kind of his answer would be that when you're not looking at it, there is something there. When we're not looking at an object, the object is still there in a what is known as a transpersonal mental state. So everything is mental. This universe is mental, according to the Advaita philosophy, as well as some of the findings of quantum physics. So obviously something is there. We think it exists exactly as we saw it, when we turn away. But what quantum physics is saying, And I've heard, leading quantum physicists, for example, the one I showed, the Nobel Prize winner, Alan Aspect, he has made the statement that, when we look at the moon is there. When we're not looking at it, moon is not there. That is the finding of quantum physics. And perhaps, I'm not capable of explaining how exactly, from quantum physics point of view, but that is a proven science. And we can check it out, with various resources. But I agree with you. It is very counterintuitive, and it will take time for us to understand this. And the only thing that I can say is a meditation practice can help us kind of intuitively understand what they are pointing to. It helped me both, from a science point of view as well as from, teachings from Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads that I refer to. I try to read and understand in my early, in my 20s and 30s. I have books that I bought, and I never could go beyond the 1 or 2 pages. But with a meditation practice, most of them, teachings and begin to make sense, and have the feeling, how could I miss this? So you do need to kind of, as the presentation said, we need to kind of expand our consciousness to kind of feel the finer teachings. Even the dream analogy, it took me several years to kind of even get to understand what they are saying. It's a very good analogy. The dream analogy that I shared is a very good analogy to kind of understand this hypothesis, whatever I proposed, that this universe is mental. It is in a superposition until it is observed, and the conscious observers bring this universe into existence. And how it is, because there are billions of conscious observers. Obviously, we are not the only one. There are other people looking at the same thing. So all those interactions, has to be explained.
Murthy, maybe some younger people are there, over 25. My 2 grandchildren are Arjun and Sonali. You want to ask some question to Satyamurthy? Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Satyamurthy. I'm Sonali. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. So I have a few questions for you. So the first one is about what is the science behind manifestation, and writing something down every single day, or telling yourself that, like, I want to become an actor. I want to achieve this thing. And, like, how does it actually affect the way that your brain works? And I mean, I think about manifestation in a way of like a car analogy. It's like, so you could have this, like, point A to point B, point C, right? And with manifestation, it's like you're telling yourself that, like, I'm going to get to that point C. You don't exactly know the road that you're going to take, or how long that road will be, or what kind of like pits in the road that you'll face, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know that your end goal, you're somehow going to get there. And all of these alternate realities exist within, like, we could be pursuing so many different lives if we wanted to, right? And it's like all of these things can exist if we have that intention, and, like, go for that, like, manifest it, and, like, really take the course towards that. But I think the hard thing, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Sylvia Plath. She's yeah.
Not, but I do understand your question regarding manifestation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but you should look into the fig tree analogy by Sylvia Plath. It's a really cool analogy. But anyway, so I wanted to understand the science behind manifestation and how that works.
Yeah. So the way I understand it, is that, in my presentation, I showed the consciousness or the unified field, that is the creative force in the universe, right? So that's how I understand. Most of the time, we want to achieve something, and most of us and then manifestation in the physical world is not instantaneous, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it takes, because we are dealing with time space. We are not in that state, in the dream state, right? But in the physical world, manifestation. But still, most of us would achieve what we set our mind to, and we take action. For example, it may take decades or years. I wanted to work in a pharmaceutical company when I was going to B Farm with Satish back in the 1980s. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I had this idea. I want to work for a US pharma company. I want to be, a director or whatever. And it happened, but it took several decades, and I didn't. Uh, and so the intention is very important, and to connect with our inner consciousness is important to manifest. But just saying that you're writing on a board, you want to achieve this, and that has some effect. But my understanding is if you connect with this at a deeper level, then what you desire will actually be broadcast, and we will probably attract people that are conducive to fulfilling your whatever manifested desire, for example. For example, believe it or not, the Miram job that I got back in 2022, this is at the height of COVID, right? My previous job had come to an end. I had to find a job. And, on the last day of the last week before my salary ran out from my previous job, I found this job.
Wow.
And in fact, Miram is a unique company in which I interviewed with the VP, and then I also had to interview with the group that I'm leading. I'm the managing the group, and they had already rejected several people. But the first question that the first person that I interacted from my own group, who is now reporting to me, she was a meditator. So she started connecting me with meditation. Somehow that thing came, and then boom! All of a sudden, I got the job. So I did not know that such a thing would happen, but later on reflecting it, somehow kind of I'd interviewed few other positions, but somehow this clicked, and I accepted it, and I'm glad that I did, because the company has been very successful, and I'm quite
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
So what happens is, when you connect with your inner self, not only you'll begin to attract, but you're also more aware and open to possibilities, where opportunities might come. Maybe, without this practice, for example, you may run across certain situations, you may not be even aware that, such and such a person could help you, achieve your potential, and so on. So that's how this, when you meet people, we are all inherently linked according to spirituality, right? Our true nature is peace and happiness, and we share our being, which is consciousness, with everyone and everything. So there's only true one universal consciousness. We are all sharing that consciousness through our body-mind mechanism. So we are all inherently linked, but if you are able to tap into this potential, you will begin to attract people that can help you with manifesting your desires, and
Yeah.
what you desire in your life in terms of job, or relationships, or whatever. So that's how I understand it. I don't know if that was helpful, but yes.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard many teachers describe it this way, that you should be, as long as we are doing, even for example, Eckhart Tolle is another spiritual teacher. He gives this example of people in Hollywood. A lot of actors and actresses want to succeed in Hollywood, so they go and live there, and they will be doing menial jobs, waitresses. But he says, whatever you're doing, you should be doing, with full attention, we honoring the job, even a menial job. How the waiter should, put a glass of water on the table. It all helps. So, if you are doing that, if you are in this stage, you can attract, a director from a Hollywood director will walk into your restaurant and interact with you. So those opportunities will present themselves. So that's kind of a how I understand these things,
Wow.
transpire. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I really
Huh.
I relate to that
That's
to
good, sir. Sonali, that's very good, Amma. Thank you. Good question.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's a wonderful question. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
Arjun, you want to ask anything, Amma? You're outside.
Wait, um, what else was Sonali was gonna say? What were you saying, Sonali? You relate to it how?
Oh, no, I was just saying that so there's this entrepreneur, her name is Emma Grede.
Mhm.
She basically created the brand jean called All American, but she came from very humble beginnings. She actually ended up dropping out of college because she couldn't afford it anymore. She's from the UK.
Mhm.
And then she took up a lot of menial jobs. She wanted to be in fashion, she wanted to be an entrepreneur, but she ended up basically running runway shows and working with like companies to get sponsorships. So like with car companies to get sponsorship for like these fashion shows. But she actually said a very similar thing of whatever she was doing, she focused on the detail. She focused on doing the very best that she could. And
Mhm.
that, like you said, attracted the right people and people started noticing her and
Right.
seeing like and I feel like my mom says this to us a lot too, is like do like if you're put like making your bed, make it to the best of your ability. If you're doing the dishes, do the dishes
Yeah.
to your best of your ability. And it's like we don't think that these things count, but somehow it's like something is keeping like it's like yeah, like all these things kind of add up. And I think that's kind of what separates people of like certain people who will just perform when they need to versus other people who in their everyday life and in just in the moments that don't count per se because you're not being graded on a test, you're not being evaluated by your executive, but if you have that level of just like of dedication and I don't know, it's an ethic that you have, right? So yeah, I'm trying to always remember that and channel that.
No,
So
yeah. So that's called power of now.
yeah.
By Eckhart Tolle.
Mm,
That's his teaching. Is whatever we are doing, most of the time, we want to get to the next thing. We are not paying
yeah.
attention to even washing dishes. We are not paying attention. We are doing something else, watching TV.
Yeah.
So he says, pay attention to whatever we are doing,
Uh-huh.
100%.
Uh-huh.
Um, so
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah. And that's actually my intention for this year is my word is like it's just having a more intentional life because like you said, we are an autopilot a lot of times and
right,
like the everyday can be just so routine and we don't engage our brains to the full capacity at all. And we forget to find joy in the small things and observe our surroundings and all these different things. So yeah, it's hard because you have to be conscious of the things that you don't that your brain is kind of not is trained not to because of our social media and attention spans and just like
right.
dopamine hits and all that. But
Thank you,
yeah,
Sona.
thank you, thank
Now,
you.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
glad that, at such a young
Excellent,
age, you
Amma.
are
I think
thinking
we're
these
running
good
topics.
10:30.
ideas, Sonali. You have
We
great
got one
ideas.
more question. One more
Nice
question. We'll
flowing,
stop it. One
nice
more question.
flowing thoughts. Nice stream of consciousness. Actually, you have this gushing ganga of consciousness and thoughts. So that's
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I had just a small analogy to share. I mean, um, so you think about technology, and your mind is actually a technology. So a way that vision has actually changed in our history is the advent of trains. So when trains came to be, this was when you saw kind of all of your surroundings like a mirage, like this
Hmm.
constantly moving landscape. And it was like there's some literature on it, but the way that people's perception changed of space completely changed, because you have what's close, which keeps moving rapidly, and then what's far. And also the word landscape comes from this these like Renaissance painters who were using like the 1 point perspective to create the illusion of larger space within like a small frame. So it's like with those two things, like the idea of a landscape and like expanding space through vision. I think similarly, you know, with this technology in the form of knowledge, which is like quantum physics, like this new technology is giving us this ability to see differently. And yeah, the observer effect might not be tangibly explicable, but it has kind of this pervasive effect once you allow it to sink in, as you said, to like a deeper, more subtle level of consciousness, not like the gross body of, whatever we can touch or see, but like this subtler kind of like third eye, that place where you can perceive things as they move in and out of you. And yeah, I think that's really cool to kind of see life as a dream, because in many ways it is, and it's a beautiful dream.
Thank you, Arju. Thank you, Arju. Very good. Anyway, anybody else got a question? We're going to Fantasy now.
Satya, one more thing. Satya, that was an excellent presentation. I'm glad I tapped to your knowledge and skill. Yeah, like you said, yeah, universal. One of the philosophy are actually Dr. Shivanand Babaji always says there is no God. God is actually universal consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That is God. That's according to him.
Mm.
So there is no real physical God. So it's universal consciousness. So when you meditate, you tap into that. So you can achieve inner peace.
Manifest. You can manifest.
I mean, physical manifestation, I don't care about. You want spiritual manifestation. Achieving things is not my.
Because you did it, that's why.
No. I want to find out more about myself than other things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. As I said, everybody will achieve, different things. So ultimately, the meaning behind it, that's what is more important. I'm glad that youngsters like Sonali and Arjun, they're thinking about these topics at a young age. I had no clue at their age.
Yes, my niece is very lucky. My brother is very lucky.
Yes.
They are twins. They both are twins. Yeah, my niece kids, they are all set. They will be
No, that's
fantastic.
wonderful to see.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. We learned so much from you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's amazing, fascinating talk.
And
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna look into that because Arjun and I went to Columbia for undergrad.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely look into that PhD that you were mentioning.
Yeah,
That
Lisa
woman.
Miller. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can look it up on YouTube. She has a number
No,
of presentations.
on the
Okay.
quantum entanglement, there are actually a couple of good documentaries on Netflix. It's a very good one. It's fascinating. I've seen that. I still want to see it again. It's so fascinating. You cannot, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
you have a time, Sonali.
Yeah. Quantum physics is really fascinating. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to that deep level of thinking, there is no physical matter, right? It's all space, right?
Yeah, I recently came across this podcast called Telepathy Tapes. If you have not, you should check that out.
Wow. Okay.
Amazing. How these non-verbal autistic kids can communicate with one another remotely.
Wow.
Amazing, mind-blowing stuff.
That's amazing.
It's called Telepathy Tapes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
number one podcast on Apple or many other platforms.
Wow.
It's in the second season, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. So all of that, can make sense with this consciousness paradigm. You cannot explain a lot of these things. We call them as, paranormal phenomena. They can't be explained with these materialist paradigms. The external world is separate. We are not, part of it. That's the current paradigm still, for the large part, right, in this world. Whereas, a lot of these near-death experience, telepathy, what is normally dismissed as paranormal phenomenon can be explained easily under this,
Quantum mechanics.
one consciousness, universal consciousness paradigm. Whereas consciousness is fundamental. If we are all linked inherently, then entanglement particles we know can talk. Even humans can talk. If you can achieve certain states of consciousness.
Wow.
We have heard in our own traditions, sages and